Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Short and Sweet. Once again, unfortunately, just the sweet one tonight and not the short one. Ben's in the chat again, though. Ben, unfortunately, still suffering the effects of this year, but thanks for joining us in the chat, Ben. We really do appreciate it and know it's difficult for you at the moment. But we keep going and really excited tonight to be coming towards the end of 2020, thank God, and be able to speak in detail to somebody that I think almost single-handedly has got a huge number of people through 2020 in the world of Google and education. So without any further ado, let's bring her on and say a big, short and sweet welcome to Cat Lamin. Hi, Cat.
Hi. Wow, that was quite an intro. I feel a little bit like I'm not going to live up to the accolades you've given me.
Oh, should we rewind?
Yeah, well, just
again.
yeah. Bit
Hi,
less.
everyone. We couldn't find anyone else, so Cat's here.
There, that's the one.
How's that? Hi, Cat.
Hi. Good to be
How you
here.
doing?
Thanks for having me. I'm very well, thank you. It's Sunday. That means nothing in my world because I'm freelance, so I just work whenever I've got work.
Well, I wouldn't say it means nothing, because in about an hour's time, something quite important.
Yes, yeah. So
even more important than this.
It depends how you look at it. It's definitely a very hour's time at GMG will be with regular global GEG Staffroom, and we have that every single week, and it's great fun. We started that in March. I say we. It was an interesting conversation I had with a few people. So at the beginning of lockdown, I was talking to some friends, and I was sort of saying, I feel like everyone's doing amazing things for educators, for students. Everyone's pulling together and doing wonderful things. And I was like, I don't feel like I can do anything. I'm not contributing. I'm not really doing anything. And then I just had this sort of moment of clarity, this idea. And I said, what about if we have a staff room and we just say anybody who wants to can come and join us? And a few people were like, yeah, that's great. Let's do that. And all these people were saying, oh, yeah, I'll join in from my GG. I've got one in Colombia. I've got one in the UK. I've got one here. Let's just sort of put all those names on it, and became this ridiculous sort of long list of this GEG and this GEG and this. And in the end, we were just like, let's just call it Global GEG, and let's have this staff room and say Global GEG staff room. That'll do. Yeah, and so we've got one of those tonight at 8:00.
We have, and they have been absolutely phenomenal. They really have. So obviously, like you say, you spoke to a few friends about it, and said, let's put ourselves out there. Let's have a staff room. Did you have sort of any expectation prior to doing it, what it was going to be like, or anything like that?
I wasn't really sure what to expect. I was kind of thinking, if I can get one or two people to come along and be a bit less stressed, then I've won. So one of the things I talk about a lot at the moment is mental health. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, I know, as we go on. But I sort of have this basic philosophy that if me saying something helps one person, then it's worth me doing it.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so I was sort of hoping at the beginning to get, one or two people. I planned a rough introduction. In fact, I think the first one I over planned, and we had 2 or 3 hours worth of stuff, and we stopped after about 90 minutes or so. And originally we started off and I just made everyone introduce themselves. And I think there must have been about 40 people on that first call.
Wow.
And I just got everyone to introduce themselves that was willing. One of the things I'm really keen on is saying you don't have to speak. Don't feel pressured. The idea around staff room is you can sit in the background with your microphone off and your camera off, as long as you let us know you're a real person, because we did have a couple of occasions where we had inappropriate videos dropped in, which we do everything we can to stop now. But yeah, and we don't mind if people just want to sit. I mean, quite often we have people who'll sit and do marking and just listen.
Yeah.
And
it's like a therapeutic podcast going on in the background.
Yeah. And what I really loved even about that first one were these people from all around the world were just, I'm just coming in to see what this is about. Oh, I just wanted to chat. And we started off and we did, I think it was what color represents you was our starter question, right, or something like that. And what I found really fascinating is when you ask somebody a question like that, that's quite informal. It makes them think for a moment, and then sort of these people who are chatting away, oh yeah, I'm great, everything's great. I'm blue because everything's really difficult and I'm struggling. And you just, it's those giving the people the opportunity to be honest with themselves. And it was really it was a really powerful feeling, just knowing that people were sort of willing and able to share. And what I know a lot of people keep saying about Staffroom is that it's nice to know that other people have the same problems I do. Because people would just say, oh, I'm finding this really difficult. I've got parents saying this and it's really difficult. I've got students who aren't logging in and it's really difficult. And it's just so incredible that somebody in Colorado is saying the same thing as somebody in Yorkshire. And you just absolutely this amazing kinship. And what I think is absolutely amazing is, in that first session were a few people I already knew, and then Frederick Ballou and Alfonso Mendoza, who I'd never met before. And now it's like, no, that's Rick and Fonz, my friends.
Yeah, and Fred.
Yep, yes, Rick and Fred. And
two for the price of one with Mr. Ballou. Yep.
Yeah, and they were in the first ever one. And then people like yourself and Ben, who joined later, and Shannon, and all these wonderful people, and Mel, they've all become friends because of Staffroom. They pop in and end up stuck there.
Yeah.
And it's so I love the thought of it. Even when I'm struggling emotionally or mentally, I force myself, I've got to get up, I've got to do this. And I always come away with a smile on my face. And it's fully A-okay. It's nice because I know someone like Abid might jump in and take some of the pressure off me, or you might come in and say a bit more. And it's because we're all getting so good at verbal and non-verbal cues from each other. We can sort of see when someone's struggling. And it's just wonderful.
It is really good. Rachel's put in the chat here, you're saying about using those colors to start off with, the fact that sometimes use the images like the rubber duckies and things like that. And on a scale of, I think the first one I came to was a Baby Yoda version. And I didn't really know what to expect. I just came in midway through a Baby Yoda conversation and I was like, what's this all about? But what I found with them and what I like about those kind of little, like you say, those teaser questions, if you like, is you answer. Nobody asks you for an explanation, but you kind of feel compelled to give one anyway.
Yeah.
And even if you weren't going to say why, you end up saying it. And it feels so much better just to get it out in the open and off your chest. Go on.
I was going to say, even the ancient Greeks recognized the power of catharsis, just that getting those feelings out. And it's just, And I really think one of the best things about it is those friendships that have developed. Like now when we do Staffroom, it's probably 80 to 90% people we already know through Staffroom, and then move on to do trainings together. But there's always a few new people, and we try our best to make them feel welcome. Sometimes I do think they must think we're completely loony.
Which is a fair reflection, really. Yeah.
As I said, one of my favourite Staffroom conversations was what meat or what fish makes up fish and chips.
Yes,
when we discovered in Australia it's shark.
Yes, absolutely.
As you do, and it was
a whole different slant on it, doesn't it?
Yeah, really lovely, and we just had so much fun over the months. And it's been 9 months now we've been doing these Staffrooms. And when we first started, we had that point in March where the whole world literally stopped in its tracks, and I was trying to make sure we could hit as many time zones. So I think I was doing Tuesday at 2 p.m. Thursday at 10 a.m. and Sunday at 8 p.m. So that was fitting around my son's sleeping pattern. And speaking of my son, he's just come in to say goodnight.
Brilliant.
So he's going to want to say hello to everyone, I'm afraid.
Hi, William.
He was the star of Staffroom early on when he didn't nap.
He was. Ben's just saying in the chat, his first Staffroom was, which William are you today?
Yeah, I had some great pictures of William that I put together into a presentation because he just pulls so many wonderful faces.
He does indeed. Hi, William.
Right, you need to go to bed, Mr. Bing. So I was planning the Staffrooms around his naps in the hope that he would nap at the right times. And then after I think a month or so, I just said, I can't do 3 of these a month. Can anybody take on one of them? And Leslie Altman from Australia said, yeah, I'll do the Thursday morning ones. And she ran that as basically the Australia crew.
Yeah, shout out to Leslie because she'll probably be getting up round about now because it's the future where she lives.
Yep, 6 a.m, isn't it?
Something like that, yeah.
6 a.m. Monday morning. Ooh.
I always like talking to Leslie though because then you know how your day's going to go.
She just, and there's something about her.
Knows.
There's something about Leslie that makes you feel really comfortable and reassured. I don't know what it is, but you just, you want to give her a big hug and say she's amazing.
She is amazing. She definitely is.
And it was just so, I was so grateful for her to take on the Thursday morning ones. And I still tried to pop in. It gave me that chance to do a bit of sort of work and things like that. And then we were doing 3 a week. And then obviously as the summer came on around the world, the summer holidays, the winter holidays for Australia, sorry, not Christmas. Christmas doesn't move. So as the holidays came on, we found that attendance was petering out and it was sort of 3 or 4 to the midweek ones and 8 or 9 in the Sunday ones. So after a bit of discussion, made the decision to just do Sunday night ones, which has worked really well because we're still getting around 20 people on a Sunday night. Varying people. So there's sort of a 10 or so people that come every time, and then 10 or more that rotate in and out. And we get people like, there's a lovely lady, and I always forget her name, but she stays up till 2 a.m. in Malaysia just to listen. And you just think, you know, it's so lovely. And when we get Abdul from now my brain's gone. So,
it's Nigeria, isn't it?
It is Nigeria. And I thought, no, if I say one country, not something. But yes, and we just get all these people, and I just think, oh, this is really incredible. And or people, not English isn't their first language, and they just want to come and listen.
And not only just that they're from different countries, but you know, those different time slots enabled, so I don't know about anybody else, but certainly enabled me to kind of really get my head around what problems other people were facing in other places. Particularly in the early days, when we were on the Thursday morning one, a lot of the APAC were involved. And of course, they were right in the heart of it, and they were kind of having everything first. So they were already in lockdown, already remote teaching, and kind of really, really supportive to the rest of us who knew we had it coming in terms of, look, we've tried this has worked, this hasn't worked. And I found that such a valuable resource to be able to then take that into my own school and into my own trust and say, look, try these approaches and try this because this works, and that probably won't because that didn't work elsewhere. And that ability to just network and let off steam at the same time was invaluable.
And I always find it really interesting. Like, one of the things I try and do fairly frequently is just ask people what's happening in their country. And I think it's really eye-opening because there are so many fascinating similarities and then some huge differences and disparities. Like in Australia, for quite a while, they didn't have a lockdown. And then in the UK, we sent students back to school. In America, a lot of the people we speak to are on the West Coast, which stayed completely remote. And
I remember, I can't remember, it might have been Steph Howe who said very, very early on, around about Easter time, that they were not expecting to be back in school at all until at least Christmas. And that kind of really rang some bells with me, where everyone at work and everyone in this country seemed to be like, oh, a couple of weeks and it'll all be sorted. I was like, I don't think it's going to be, you know, and that itself was hard because you naturally want to plan, you want to move forward, you want to look forward to things. But I've always had, all throughout this year, I've always had in the back of my mind, I could plan that, but it's probably not going to happen. And I found it, I'll be brutally honest, I found it very difficult to get excited about anything.
I know what you mean. And one of the things, yesterday we did a talk about joy, and I was asked to talk about mental health on that as well. And it's a really hard time of year right now anyway. And then we add into the fact that everything we've planned for the last 12 months has been cancelled because, you know, nothing's going to happen until March at least. So that literally means a full year of cancelled events. And that's heartbreaking. And then on top of that, we've got people dying. We've got disasters around the world. We've got, you know, various other crises going on. It's so difficult emotionally and mentally right now. It's soul destroying, quite frankly.
And that's where like Staffroom and things like that have been absolute kind of lifesavers, quite literally, because those were the very things that I knew would happen, because there was nothing that was going to get in the way of that. There was nothing going to stop me hanging out with people like yourself and Luis in Colombia and Steph in the States and Leslie in Australia. That could happen. That wasn't going to be a problem at all, you know. And that was, I think, was probably the one reliable, one constant that I had to kind of pin everything on. And you know, and I don't say it lightly. It 100% got me through what was a pretty horrible start to the year. A lot of people may not know, but in September of 2019, my wife Claire was diagnosed with gallstones, and really, really bad. And they kept postponing her operation and everything else. And that had its toll on us and the family. I ended up having to go and see the doctor and having some time off work and then doing a phased return. And luckily, medication has really helped and kind of kicked in and sort of leveled things out a little bit. But she finally got her operation 3 days before lockdown.
Oh my gosh.
So she'd been off, by the time we went back to school in September, she'd been off for virtually a year because she had to have a phased return after her operation. But of course, her phased return was at home because she didn't go back to work. She was working from the conservatory. So she phased from the lounge to the conservatory, and that was it. But she never got back into a building to see people again. So although she was back working, she wasn't back with the people she worked with. And a lot of them weren't au fait with video calling and things like that. So they were happy to text and email, but didn't want to face. And I remember the first person that she worked with that video called, she was on there for about 2 hours and they were just laughing and giggling. And it was so nice to hear. And that they did talk about work, don't get me wrong, but it was probably... of the 2 hours, about an hour and a half was just laughing and giggling and so good to see. And that was a real turning point. But without the classroom, the staff room, certainly I would have massively struggled this year. And I definitely wouldn't have been doing all the things I am doing. We wouldn't have Short and Sweet. We wouldn't be involved with, GG UK and Global GG, and I probably wouldn't have applied for the Innovator Academy either. So, as I said at the start, I've got a huge amount to be grateful to you for, Kat, as have so many other people. So,
thank you. It's really nice of you to say.
Thank you.
So,
it's hard to take compliments, though, isn't it?
It really is. It's actually one of the things I've been working on with my therapist. So I know a lot of people know this, but it's really absurd almost that I've spent all these months helping people and listening to people, and I keep saying I'm not a medical professional, I'm not a therapist in any way myself, I'm just a person who has suffered from depression, and I didn't notice it in myself, and it was absolutely bizarre. I was getting migraines for weeks and I had to cancel a couple of staff rooms because I couldn't do them. And the doctor said to me, I kept ringing him, trying different medications, and he kept saying, is everything okay? Are there any stresses? And I was saying, no, nothing. And I said, oh, well, apart from the obvious. And he said, oh, okay, what do you mean by that? And it hit me. And I just stopped. And I said, well, and I just cried. I just cried, between the pandemic, the isolation, I've got the little worries. Like I'm worried my son doesn't spend enough time with other children. To the big worries, I'm worried there are people starving in the world. I'm worried that there are abusive husbands and wives around the world, and all these things are sort of piling in my brain. And I just sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. And obviously, that was the point where I realised that things weren't okay, and I was struggling. And I spoke to the doctor a bit more, and he recommended I see a therapist. Diagnosed me with depression, put me on back on antidepressants, and there's a thing you do when you are about to see a therapist. It's called a GAD test, and it's just a list of numbers, and you give them all scores depending on the frequency you feel certain things. And I think the first time I did that, I came out as medium to high on anxiety and depression. Yeah. Now I'm below mild on both of them. Now that I've got it out of my system.
Doing that well,
Yeah, the GAD is it's very telling because you don't realize how much is building up until you go through those numbers and think, actually, I feel this a lot.
Yeah, and then you add it all up at the end and you look at your total score and you kind of think, wow.
Yeah, yes, something.
And I think that's a real eye opener, or it certainly was for me. In that I was like, wow, this is a tried and tested process. Telling me that I've got all this going on and I've just been carrying it. No wonder I'm exhausted, and I think that was the real kind of moment for me. I went to the doctors, basically I was at work and I just wasn't with it, and they said to me, you're not all right, are you? And as soon as they said that, it just I was like, no, I'm going to phone the doctors. And I got an appointment luckily that same morning. I walked into the doctor's surgery, sat down, and we had a little bit of chat about what was bothering me, and she said, I'm going to sign you off. And the relief was just like a wave that I could just have some time. And like you say, I just sat and cried because I was so relieved. And then I took myself home and I went for like a 2-hour walk in the country, went down to the nature reserve, sat on a little bench and just had some time to myself. And it was incredible. But at the same time, I felt really guilty.
Yes. Yeah. And that's a really common one as well. I find, I mean, certainly when I've struggled, you just feel like one of the things I said to the therapist quite early on was, I just feel like I don't have any right to feel sad. I don't have any right for this. And she sort of said, well, why do you feel like you don't deserve to be sad? And that really struck me, that why don't I deserve to be but yeah, and also the guilt, letting your students down, you feel like you're letting other people in your life down. Like, I kept apologizing to Stuart. I'm so sorry you've got to put up with this. He's like, why are you apologizing? And it's and as you said, that moment when the doctor said, I think you need to see a therapist, it was like, oh yes. And I could feel it drain out of me, that sense of I'm holding this inside and it's too much.
I did a course of CBT as a group session, just around about, I started mid-January of this year, and it was only like a 6-week thing. But the first time I walked in there, I was really, really nervous because I had no idea what to expect. And there were 12 of us in the group, and the 2 people facilitating were fantastic. But looking around the room, half of us were men. And that was so comforting to see other blokes, because I don't know, I just assumed like it was going to be me and a load of other people, but there wouldn't be many blokes there. But clearly, you know, things are changing, and we are getting to the stage where as men we're feeling like we can talk about things a little bit more, and that doesn't mean we should, you know, be more important than women who need to talk about it as well. But there's always or long been that stigma attached to emotion and things like that from the male side of things. But those CBT sessions were real eye openers, and everybody in that room was either in education or the NHS.
Yeah, I mean, that's
and one lawyer. Yeah.
Occasionally you get police if they're willing to. And there is still such a massive cultural stigma around mental health. And I've noticed more and more frequently celebrities talking about their mental health. And that's, you know, any celebrity that has the balls to come out and say that, it just, I think they're wonderful. I just think it's so powerful to be able to say, I struggle. You know, I always say one of my favorite songwriters is Frank Turner, and he's literally written an album about his depression. And it's really important that we see these role models talking about mental health before it's too late, obviously. And so I made my decision. I think it must have been about 3 years ago, 2-3 years ago. I made this decision that I wanted to be open about my mental health. I think I did a blog many years ago, but it seemed to cause more troubles than it helped, because people just weren't ready for that. And then I did a talk at PyCon UK, so Python Conference UK in Cardiff, and they're really great. And I think there were about 3 or 4 mental health talks that year. And I just talked about education, about the communities, programming community, and how mental health is a real issue. And you know, I thought, is this just really indulgent? Is this just me talking about my experiences? And afterwards I had 2 people in tears telling me how much it helped them hearing someone else talk about it. And that for me was a real eye-opener. And then obviously as we've moved into Staffroom, so that was one of the reasons behind Staffroom, because I'd had that moment of these people literally sobbing because nobody ever talks about their mental health. I thought, well, okay, let's do a Staffroom where people have an opportunity to talk if they need to. And actually, as we said, what's more than anything developed is a very silly space. But there is still that edge of it's open. If you want to talk, you can. And people listen and sympathize. So while we talk about ice cream and sharks, and I honestly can't think of what else, but the conversation becomes more ludicrous every time.
Normally food, isn't it?
It is often food. I think it's just, but I think that's also because we all come from different cultures. So we're kind of interested and excited.
And also because Rachel Dunn's invariably cooking as well.
Every week. She's amazing. She cooks such exciting things.
She's
Always with a
Staffroom's
glass of
own
wine.
Nigella. Yeah, exactly.
It's incredible. But yeah, and it's just that opportunity to clear your head and feel a bit more uplifted, and it's wonderful. And having that opportunity to talk is just very powerful. And I found, so I mean, this time obviously when I was first told, when the doctor first said, look, I think you're suffering from depression again, it was a weight lifted off my shoulders, and it was still very hard, and I did spend most of that day sobbing, and I certainly wasn't immediately better.
Was that because you felt you almost like taking a step backwards? Or?
I think it was shock more than anything.
Right.
It was just, I can't believe, because I've spent however many years staying on top of it, I think is probably the best way to put it.
Yeah.
And even when my dad died, it didn't overwhelm me. When he was ill, I had a time where I took some medication, but I was still on top of it, and I was keeping an eye on it, and I was watching myself. And this time it slipped past me, and I almost felt angry that I hadn't spotted it.
Right. Yeah.
And I think a lot of the crying as well was the fact that I was sort of letting it go, letting it out.
Yeah.
Letting the pressure out, letting the tension out. And yeah, it's a bit of feeling guilty because how could I let this happen? I've got a son to worry about. I can't possibly get ill. I can't put this pressure on Stuart. He's really busy. Work is too busy. He can't cope with me being ill. And all these things that go around in your head.
I was exactly the same. My daughter was in year 11 at the time. So I was like, obviously Claire was struggling because she was ill and in and out of hospital, and we were doing A&E runs and blue lighting every other week sort of thing.
Oh, God.
She was going through her GCSEs and some health issues of her own as well. And I just felt like, I can't add this on top of it. I'm just myself,
I've got to be strong. I can't possibly be the one that's weak. And I can't let this happen. And so I've been really open about it this time around, and I've put stuff on Instagram, and all my social media, just so it's there, because part of me the whole time is thinking, God, people must think I'm a real exhibitionist. I'm really arrogant talking about my mental health as if it's important. But then the more I think about it, the more people respond to it. I realize how important it is, because I get quite a few public messages. People, say thank you for this. I had an old school friend who I've barely spoken to more than a couple of comments on Facebook for 15 years. And he messaged me after one of my posts to say, I needed someone to talk to. My mum died today. And he just wanted to chat. And he just said, thank you for being so open. And it's just so incredible, the response I've had. And one of the things I mentioned this the other day, what I've seen, especially in the last few weeks, is no end of people messaging me. I mean, I think there's been 4 or 5 people who've sent me a message and just said, I feel really angry, or I feel really sad, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
And it's like people are recognizing these emotions, but just don't know what to do with them.
Absolutely.
And because we've created this safe space to talk about it, people are willing to. And I think for half of those people, I've said, I think maybe you want to seek medical help. And that's fine, because actually we all need to seek medical help sometimes. Don't think of it as being a negative. Think of it as like breaking your arm. It's annoying, the pain in the bum, but we need to get help sometimes.
Yeah. You wouldn't say I'll fix that myself, would you?
Yeah. And then the other, some of the people, it's just a case of it was a one-off. And I've just said, keep an eye on it. If it comes back, if you feel that way again, make sure you talk about it. Because that's one of the key things. I don't know whether you find that, but one of the things that I find really hard is I need to talk about it. I need to speak to somebody, and I don't want to. So I've sat and written a message to my best friend 15 times and deleted it. And I can't send that. And actually, I do find it easier to post to Instagram than to message my best friend and say, my brain is struggling, help.
And I've actually, God, Karen.
As I say, she did send me a message once saying, I can't believe I found out from Instagram that you're not well. She was obviously joking and winding me up, but
no, absolutely. I've actually been writing for want of a better word, a bit of a book, just of everything over the years that's kind of bother me, and it's not ever anything that I just would publish. I don't think it's just one of those things that I found it when I was first diagnosed and I had that time off. It just helped me to get it off my chest, and just putting it down on paper felt like I was just taking it off my own shoulders and validating it somewhat by putting it out there. And I think the other thing that was a big game changer for me through the CBT course I did was the concept of worry time every day, and just setting aside 15 minutes at a time that suited me, when that would be when I would worry about stuff. And if it didn't fit into 15 minutes, then you stop, because it's 15 minutes. And if you don't fill up your 15 minutes, great. And that was a real eye-opener, and I'd highly recommend that to people listening who might have similar problems. Basically, anything that bothered me during the day, I'll just say, I'll just make a note of that. I'll worry about that at 6:15 tonight. And I'd get to 6:15, and by then it might have already been solved. Somebody else might have taken it on, or it might be something that I generally did need to think about. But 9 times out, within probably about 4 weeks, I went from worrying about something every night to every other night to once or twice a week, and it gradually went down as well. And I've just got it set as a reminder on my phone. I've still got it on there. It still reminds me at 6:15 every night that it's worry time. And if I've got anything to worry about, that's when I do it. But that was a massive game changer in just kind of saying, it's okay to worry, but don't let it take over your life. Like, do it at a time that suits you, the same as you would anything else. Do it when it suits you. And I've got really bad at answering the phone, I must admit, because I've long been under the impression that the telephone's the rudest invention in the world, because it's literally, I don't care what you're doing, I want to talk to you now. And I'm very much now, if I'm in the middle of doing something, I'm not going to try and do both things. I'll ring you back when it's right for me. And people I'm close to understand that, and that's fine. And if it's really urgent, they'll ring twice, and then I'll know, definitely I need to answer it, sort of thing. But that in itself has been a bit of a weight off as well. Is there anything in particular that's helped you, Kat? Any kind of one tip? Or
I think the main thing is just, as you say, writing it down and thinking it out and deciding what is real and what's not, if that makes sense. Because one of the hardest things I find with my mental health is that little voice saying, you're not good enough, nobody likes you, nobody cares, nobody's listening to you, you're not good enough. And that's really overwhelming. Like, I mean, it's terrifying, because I know it's not real, but at the same time, it overpowers that knowing it's not real. And I'll think that, these people don't really like me, they're just being polite. And so that process of sort of writing things down, as you say, just taking that step away from it and helping appreciate that this isn't actually real. This is a shame spiral. This is not what's happening. Can be really good. And just making sure I talk about it. So I do force myself to message my friend. I do force myself to sit down with Stuart and say, look, I'm not coping today. I know you've got a lot on, but I just need to say this.
Just get it out there.
And making time to do things that make me happy, as we said yesterday with joy. It's really important to find those moments of joy in every day.
Absolutely.
And recognizing that I'm, the other day I was driving and thinking I am irrationally angry right now. I shouldn't be that angry about an idiot school child crossing the road.
Well, unless it's yours.
Yeah. But I am. I'm getting really frustrated by this. I'm getting angry with the van driving badly. I know something's not right. I just need to stop and breathe and understand and recognize what that is. That is my brain having a moment. Yeah.
It's that primordial kind of monkey brain taking over, sort of thing, and kicking off. Your innovator project then, Kat, mental health in education. I don't need to say where did that come from, because that's obvious. But tell us a little bit about that.
So that actually came out of Staffroom. I did my innovator in Sweden in 2019, November 2019. And I actually originally went in with a problem around learning difficulties and trying to sort of centralize and make it easier for people with learning difficulties to use technology, which I love. And I'm I'm very passionate. I often work with children with special educational needs, especially dyspraxia, dyslexia, autism, all of those sort of things. But I wasn't passionate about the project I was building. I thought it was cool, but it wasn't hitting the right place. And then from Staffroom, I realized what I really was passionate about, and that was supporting mental health and supporting educators in just talking about what's going on. And so I rang the fail bell, everyone's favorite, and recognized that my original idea wasn't working, but actually I've probably got a better idea here. And so I went out almost immediately, registered the domain mentalhealthineducation.com, and put a call out for proposals. And I think I said, I'd like to get 2 proposals to do one a day. And I think I got it was about 16 I've had in total, 15, 16. And I'm still collecting them, and I still would love to hear from people. And sort of the idea is that people write down their experiences of mental health and around education, whether that be as a student, as a teacher, or as support staff in a school. So on the site at the moment, there are stories from a broad range of people. There are people for whom education has saved them. So becoming a teacher has saved them from a previous career. And there are people like me who I found in some ways teaching made my mental health worse. But that was also down to the expectations. And Darren and I were talking about this earlier. When I was teaching, it wasn't a thing that you talked about. Mental health was not, you couldn't be a good teacher if you suffered from depression. And I've always been relatively open about it. And so my school knew I suffered from depression. In fact, we actually had a very unfortunate situation where a member of staff had very severe mental health problems, which led her to take the school to court. And one of her claims was that the school weren't respectful of her previous mental health, because she said she had anorexia in the past and things. And I went into the courtroom and stood up and said, look, I've got depression, and I think the school has supported me. But looking back, what they did support me in some ways, but there was also that expectation that sort of, you won't talk about this publicly. This isn't a thing you discuss. We know you've got it. We will support you, but don't let the parents know. Don't let the children know. And actually, I kind of feel now that it would have been better if that wasn't the case. Because I think I was better at dealing with the children's problems because I understood them better. And I've said this before, but I had a parent who came to me and said that their 9-year-old daughter had been diagnosed with clinical depression, and they didn't know what to do. And, the mum burst into tears, as you would expect, because that's not what you want. And I did very quietly say, I know what she's going through and I can support her. And the smile on the mum's face, that relief, that moment of, oh my goodness, somebody knows what we're going through, was phenomenal. And I just think we've got to make it less taboo. We've got to make it more public and more willing to be talked about, because otherwise it just gets worse. If you don't talk about your mental health, then you're going to get stuck into a massive hole of despair.
And what are we teaching our young people if we pretend it's not happening?
So that was sort of the reasoning behind the website, was to give that voice to educators. And I've always been very clear, you don't have to write your name on it. I'm not expecting everyone to publicly own up to it because of that taboo. And I think probably 2/3 of the stories have names on. And it's interesting because I would say mostly the American contributors are fine with their name going on, and the UK ones are not. I've had one.
That's systemic.
Absolutely, I think it's a cultural thing as well. I think in the US it's much more prevalent to acknowledge that you are taking medication for mental health problems. I know, maybe it's a stereotype from films, but it seems like everyone in movies is seeing a therapist. Whereas in the UK, you definitely don't casually drop into conversation, oh yeah, I've got depression and I'm seeing a great therapist.
No. And I think there's also a massive culture in the UK as well, particularly in schools, of presenteeism. and we push it to the hilt with students. Attendance is everything. You must attend 100% of the time, and I totally understand that. But equally, a student who attends 95% of the time, but recovers quickly from an illness, rather than trying to slowly drudge on and being present, but not really in the room. What's the better option? And I think for students and for staff, particularly in education, sometimes it's more work to be off and setting in cover work and arranging all of that and worrying about what's going on in your classroom, which is your space and everything else. So it's more work to be off. So we tend to just kind of get up and go in and drag ourselves through it, which, is to our detriment at the end of the day. But it's hard to see that sometimes.
When I look back, the amount of times I think that I probably made an illness 3 times longer than it needed to be because I went in when I wasn't well. And I see it now. You see teachers sort of wandering around in a zombie state because they feel like couldn't possibly be ill. It's not fair on anyone, but actually you're making it worse by going in. It's crazy. So there is definitely that element, that sense of you should go to school. You should be in work. You shouldn't acknowledge illness. Sorry, you may notice that the small amount of movement. Our little one's gone to bed now, so my other half is appearing because we're in a very small 1-bedroom flat.
That's all right.
Yes, he's not listening. I've got headphones in. But yes, so and it's really nice, the stories I've had on the website. And for example, one person who phoned me up and said, I want to tell you my story, but I don't think I'm brave enough. Can I just tell you? And I said, yeah, sure, that's fine. Do you mind if I record it? No, please don't, because I won't talk openly if it's being recorded.
Right.
So I sat frantically typing everything they were saying, trying to keep up. So there's one story there that was dictated to me, and then I sent to the person afterwards. I said, is this what you wanted me to say? And we made a few tweaks and a few clarifications, because obviously I was trying to make notes based on what they were saying. And that's fine, because it's more about having those stories and having that sharing out there. So I mean, I'd love to get more stories. If anyone's watching, please, if you have experiences of mental health, positive, negative, anything to do with education, please share them. That would be amazing. And there is one from a student who suffered from mental health problems in year 10 and 11. I think that's really, really important, that we acknowledge that it's not just adults that are struggling, especially now.
Absolutely.
I mean, let's be honest.
I think I said earlier on today to some people I was talking to, the way that young people have dealt with what's gone on this year, I am full of admiration for, because the one thing we always say to each other in this community is about, kids need stability. They need to know where they stand. They like rules. They like to know what's going on. But all of a sudden, there was no stability. They didn't know where they stood. It was constantly changing. 1 minute they were invincible and they couldn't get it. And you can't get it in schools. The next minute they're super spreaders and it's all their fault. And stay away from your grandparents because you might be the end of them and things like that. So those mixed messages coming through, and particularly with the media, and I'm not going to say social media because I think it's all media, are very good at publishing headlines, and some red-topped newspapers have done a very good job of upsetting a lot of people in recent weeks. But they're very good at publishing the headlines, and quite a lot of people, and I'm not going to say students with this, quite a lot of people read the headline and that's all. And don't read the full article, and then don't take that critical thinking approach to it to kind of say, hold on a minute, that doesn't marry up with what I've read or heard or seen elsewhere. I'm finding it very difficult at the moment to scroll past people saying, well, I don't know anyone who's got it. And I'm finding it really difficult. I am scrolling past, but I'm just like,
and that's
how bloody lucky are you?
That's one of the things that I think is really damaging, is that you get those people who just don't believe it's real, and you just I find myself just getting lost in, are you really that selfish and self-centered that you don't think it matters because you don't personally know anyone who's got it.
Yeah. It's bizarre. It really is.
Very, very weird.
But as
as
Simon said in the chat here, the students' mental health over the coming months and years, I think, is going to be so important, because the year 11s that have just finished have got a whole set of exam results that people may not value as much as they would have done in the past, rightly or wrongly. The current year 11s still don't really know what's happening.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I've got a couple of students who've got their mocks the first week back after January, and they're absolutely freaking out because they don't know how important those mocks are going to be. They don't feel like they've been taught properly for the last 9 months.
Yeah.
And they're just having a bit of a meltdown, and that's not what Christmas should be.
No, absolutely. And, it's just, like I say, I'm full of admiration for the young people and how well they've coped with it, considering, and the fact that they're not allowed to go and socialise with their friends.
Yeah.
But we're happy to, well, I say we're happy to. We put them in a room with 30 others for 5 hours a day, but then expect them to just get on with their learning.
Yeah, and they're not allowed to have birthday parties.
No, but what would we do? We'd sit and have a chat. Because that's the human nature. You want to talk to people. You want to build relationships, and you do that through communication. So I think huge credit to the students and to the staff, not just teachers, but support staff, everybody. Cleaners.
Anybody working in a school right now deserves huge credit. And every time I've gone into a school, the first thing I've said is that I just want you to know I think you're amazing.
Yeah.
To the teachers, So on the subject of student mental health, it's been my one thing for primary schools, even from the start of lockdown, when they're saying, what should we do? What could we do? And I keep saying, you need to have a video chat a week, not for learning, but just to check in.
Yeah.
You need to have that with your students. They miss your face. I mean, especially at primary level, those children love their teacher with all their heart.
Yeah.
And they went from seeing them every single day to not seeing them again till the end of the school year in some cases. My nieces up in Lincoln, the school sent home a pack at the beginning, and I think they rang a couple of times about the younger niece. And that was it.
And some will have finished primary and gone on to secondary and not seen their teacher at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think it's so key not to worry about the learning, but to worry about the emotional health.
Yeah.
How are your students doing check-ins, making sure they're okay? And I can't say that enough to any school I work with. I just keep saying, whatever you do, try and have at least once a week, if not once a day, a check-in, a PSHE lesson. Yeah.
Tell us a joke. Show us your cat, anything you like. Just be normal for a bit. Yeah. Yeah.
Have a chat like we would in lunchtime, at break time, in the classroom at the end of the lesson.
Absolutely.
It's just so important, and it's those things that we forget because we're so worried that we've got to deliver all the content. Yeah, and that brings us right back around to the whole Staffroom thing, and that's exactly what you did for us. You provided, for want of a better word, a PSAG lesson or period where we could just come and have a chat and share what we were having for lunch and what was getting us down and what we were having fun with, and it was absolutely brilliant. And we're coming up towards 8 o'clock, which means Staffroom is nearly upon us. It's been brilliant talking to you, Kat, and I could go on talking for hours, and that's just me. Right, we've got another hour coming up. It just won't be recorded. Yeah, exactly. But if there are any particular questions in the chat, I did see a couple pop up. I know Rachel asked whether, when I was talking about the worry time, whether I used an app or a book. You know me, I used an app. I did use a specific app to start with, and then I just thought, you know what, that goes quite nicely in Keep. That'll do. So I just keep a note in Google Keep, because it's always there. It's at the side of my screen. If I want to add it on, it's on my phone. If I want to add it on, and it's nice and quick. And Pilly's just put her Christmas tree up. So that's I love it. I love seeing all the names and thinking, oh, there's somebody from Mexico. Oh, there's somebody from. Just makes me feel so fuzzy. Fuzzy. So happy, warm and fuzzy. Great word. Yay! I love it. That's a great word. I just love connecting with people around the world and thinking this. It just because it feels like you're all around a table having a coffee or a glass of wine. Absolutely. But we're not. We're literally thousands of miles away. We can still have the coffee or the wine, though. Yeah. True.
That doesn't have to stop. Or ice cream.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, I wonder if I've got time to get a bowl of ice cream before going to Staffroom.
I was wondering what's on the menu for tonight.
Well, I'm sort of wondering if Abid or someone's gone in to open up to let people in.
Well, hopefully he has done, but we're not going to keep you any longer because we know you want to get over there. So I just want to say a huge thank you to you, Cat, not just for this evening, but for everything you've done for everybody across the world since March the 16th or wherever it was. It feels like so long ago, but also only like yesterday at the same time. It's really crazy. And, I think things like Staffroom, long may they continue in whatever guise, because it's been phenomenal being able to connect with people from all around the world. And like I said, that's one of those things that is the constant that can always happen. And a couple of people before last Christmas were saying to me with things to do with online learning, yeah, but what happens if the internet goes down? And I love nothing more now than turning around to those people and saying, yes, but what if society goes down? And they really don't have a comeback for that, and have started to embrace the technology that runs with it, and are now becoming some of the biggest advocates. So for all of the negativity around 2020, I think there's been some absolute gems that have come out of it, and Staffroom is definitely one of them. So thanks for tonight, Kat. People in the chat, thanks for coming and watching. Do check out mentalhealthineducation.com. If you have a story to share, or you know someone who's got a story to share with Kat, please do get in touch, because the more we talk about it, the better we'll all deal with it, not just for ourselves, but for our colleagues, for our friends, for our family, and for our students as well.
I just add one thing, is that don't think your story is too small, because lots of people think, oh no, I'm not important enough. My story isn't interesting enough. Any story is interesting. Nothing is too small. Please share with us, because it will be good for you and good for us.
Absolutely. That's been brilliant. Thank you ever so much, Kat. And thanks everyone for joining us, and we will see you next time. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.